in Washington with the breaking news special report. Donald Trump on trial, just one step away from the jury getting the case, just as soon as they hammer out jury instructions, with a long, super technical but super important stretch to close out the day. Just 1 week now from closing arguments. Mr. Trump reversing himself and deciding not to testify. You see him here. He is speaking live in the hallway in court. He hasn't said so far why he didn't testify, but his son, Don Jr., made the case for him.
You're going to get a kangaroo court. There's nothing more, nothing less. There should be absolutely no reason, no justification to that whatsoever.
We'll gut check that in a second, but this decision means we finish this stage of the trial with 16 days of testimony. 22 total witnesses, 2 from Mr. Trump's defense team, the rest for the prosecution. And the last one for the defense, Robert Costello, the former legal advisor to Michael Cohen, staying sassy in the courtroom again, rolling his eyes at one point as prosecutors tried to attack his credibility, accusing him of trying to intimidate Cohen. Costello calling that claim ridiculous. Still, most of the day, most of the afternoon, boy, we spent it deep in the weeds. The judge was working with both sides to try to hash out jury instructions. And let's be real, not spicy, not dramatic, but so important because it lays out exactly how the jury should approach these historic 34 felony charges that Mr. Trump pleaded not guilty to. Big question now. The timeline. Closing arguments up next Tuesday. That is the expectation here. And the jury may get this case either late that day or more likely the day after. But in between, of course, is the long Memorial Day weekend. Maybe relaxing for most of us, perhaps less so for those 12 everyday New Yorkers, for that teacher, salesman, speech therapist, and more, because they're going to have a big question hanging over them for the holiday. Will you vote to convict a former president? For the next 20 minutes, we're wrapping up this whole trial with a look at that big question that hangs over it. What comes next? With our team of reporters and legal and political experts here to break it all down. I want to start with Rahema Ellis outside the courthouse. So importantly, Rahema, where did we land on the jury instructions? The last words that the jury will hear from the judge, from the court, before they go behind closed doors to hash this thing out.
Yeah, I was inside the courtroom in the overflow courthouse in the overflow room, and you gave the adjectives correctly. Let me add a couple more. Tedious, complicated, but extremely crucial what they were doing in here, because this is what these jurors are going to hear in terms of what the jury instructions are going to be. There's such things they've got to consider, like for the everyday person, what is direct evidence? What is circumstantial evidence? What does it mean to have beyond a reasonable doubt? And what does it mean to intent to defraud? Some of those things that they were hashing out this afternoon, and part of what they went through was one thing. Let me tell you this. It was about the Access Hollywood tape. The defense called for the jury to be instructed on the legitimate purpose of the Access Hollywood tape, but that was denied by the judge. The defense says essentially that the testimony of the tape was used to determine something about the impact on Trump and why he might have been motivated to commit a fraud as he's been accused of committing. But the judge said that there has been testimony on that. Indeed, there has. And you remember Hope Hicks, she testified that when that Access Hollywood tape came out, she said the campaign was in, quote, a meltdown. So the judge denied the defense request to give the jury more information about that. Another request that was denied by the judge for the defense, they were asking about some instructions about non-disclosure agreements, and that they wanted the judge to instruct the jury that they are not inherently illegal. Why? Well, because there was an NDA with Karen McDougal and with Stormy Daniels, both of them being paid to keep them quiet. Thus, the hush money trial, as this trial has been so named. But the judge also said on that, no need to go into that. He believes that the jury is clear about non-disclosure agreements and that they don't need further instruction from this judge on that. There'll be plenty of instructions, Hallie. You can depend on it, but he's not going to concentrate on at least those 2 items. Hallie?
Rahema Ellis live for us there in downtown Manhattan after another long day in court. Thank you very much, Rahema. Appreciate it. I want to bring in now somebody who knows the prosecution's star witness well, Michael Cohen's legal advisor and former attorney, Lanny Davis. Lanny, thank you for being back on the show.
Thank you, Hallie.
I wonder if you've spoken with Michael Cohen. How's he doing now that this trial is close to wrapping up?
So I have chosen not to. Of course, we talk many times a day. trial. I did not want it to come up in cross-examination. What did you talk to Lanny Davis about, since I'm no longer his attorney, and I don't want to be called as a witness?
We mentioned those attempts by Costello to apparently try to keep Cohen quiet. That was part of the testimony that came up today. What can you tell us about the relationship between these two?
Look, I know everything about this, and I've read all the emails and all that went on. I'll just give you 2 facts, and I won't offer my opinion. Fact 1, Costello asked to address and testify before the grand jury that ended up indicting Mr. Trump. And he asked to appear before the grand jury. Unusual request. The prosecutor said, okay, up to New York to be with Michael, just in case the grand jury would want to hear from Michael to rebut. Was the grand jury thought his testimony was so unimportant, I think they did not even need Michael to rebut. The second thing is there was never an engagement letter. He tried to get Michael to be his client. He actually billed him for time without an engagement letter. Those are facts. I'll leave the rest to the opinions of people looking at Costello's body language to decide whether or not he's a credible witness.
Well, we'll get into that more later on in this conversation during the special report. But let me ask you about a couple of key moments for Michael Cohen while he was on the stand. Moments that are almost certain to come up during closing arguments, which are set for 1 week from today. One of them, of course, the acknowledgement by Michael Cohen that he stole money from the Trump Organization. The other, this discussion about a phone call to Keith Schiller, the former president's sort of bodyguard at the time, about what the defense says and what Cohen says was this sort of prank call he was getting, these calls he was getting from a 14-year-old, but a call that is so central to the prosecution's case here about this hush money payment and what Donald Trump knew about it.
So I would love to have a chance to follow up on this question about the only 2 issues facing the jury, just to keep. So the first on the call to everybody, including your audience, Trump didn't use a cell phone. So how did Michael communicate with him, sometimes dozens of times a day, by calling Keith Schiller? That's in evidence. One of the subjects of that call was to get permission from Mr. Trump after David Pecker and Hope Hicks and other people have testified that they wanted him to keep Ms. Daniels quiet right before the election. After Access Hollywood, Michael Cohen would call many, many times Keith Schiller. He'd hand the phone to Mr. Trump. That was the key narrative that mattered to us and to me. When it came to this harassing issue of what turned out to be a claimed 14-year-old, yes, Michael Cohen said he had had that conversation with Keith before the phone was turned over. That's not a lie. That's just an omission of something less important.
Lanny Davis, we're glad to have you on. We got to get you either a microphone or some headphones because I think we had a little bit of audio issues, but I think our folks caught most of it there. Lanny, thank you so much. Really appreciate you being on. Let me bring in now a couple people who know Mr. Trump well, 2 of his former attorneys, Michael Vanderveen and William Brennan. Thank you both for being back.
Thanks for having us.
Well, in stereo audio as well. I love it. Michael, let me start with you about these jury instructions here, because, boy, I mean, I think Rahima said it. It is tedious. It is weedy. You're attorneys. I'm not. It is tough to follow, but it is so critical. This is the last thing the jury's going to hear before they go behind closed doors.
Wicked important.
Yeah.
It can really make or break the case for either the prosecution or the defense. I was interested in the beginning of the week, maybe the end of last week, they were talking about the jury instructions, and Bove asked Mershon, hey, what are we going to do about the jury instructions? He said, I'm going to follow the ones I did in the Trump Ward case. Of course, those were our jury instructions that we had to use. We negotiated those over weeks. Bill did a lot of that negotiation. And then, of course, a lot of the argument in front of the judge. Same arguments you're hearing today are the same arguments that we were putting forward. And I got to tell you, every word in a jury instruction is crucial. We spent 2 days on for the benefit of, or on behalf of.
In behalf of or on behalf of.
And that difference of that one word
of that matter.
Had 2 very different legal meanings. Yeah. And then, of course, you take those words that the judge chose and you argue the legal meanings that are there on the paper. So very interesting.
But, Bill, one distinction, of course, the jury's going to have like 6 days. I mean, between now, they've left, they're gone, they're not back until after the long weekend here. How do you think that impacts their thinking or their sort of state of mind based on the cases you've brought?
It's just human nature when there's 6 days and you've been sitting there for, 20 days. I can't imagine, and I think this jury's been very attentive to what I hear, but it's just human nature. Somebody's going to be up, Hallie, at 3 in the morning, and they're going to get sick of playing Wordle, and then they're going to hit, oh, just look at one thing, Trump trial. It happens. But I think that
is, to be clear, not allowed. They're not supposed to do that. The judge made clear, don't be doing that.
But I think that they're going to focus on the important things, such as, I noticed Lanny, who I have tremendous affection and respect for, he answered your question about the 14-year-old who Michael Cohen wanted the Secret Service on. He didn't seem to get to the part about the $60,000 of stolen client money. That's a big deal.
His audio was in and out, so we were maybe going to get to that.
Maybe it must have been out all week. But I was shocked because we know these prosecutors. We've tried against them. Frankly, they should have listened to Lanny and read his book where Lanny advises when you have a problem situation or a scandal, tell it early, tell it often, and tell it yourself. They shouldn't have let the defense shine a light on these issues. And I just can't imagine that jurors, especially the lawyers on the case, won't be completely turned off by a lawyer stealing money from his client. And Lanny's other point that he's made all week is that this alleged Weisselberg document is like the smoking gun. It's, this is the map of trouble. And the theft impacts that document. I'm not saying it eviscerates it, but it certainly taints it, because now we know that the numbers aren't really what they were.
It'll be up to the jury to determine that piece of it, but I do wonder, when you two were here, I guess it was 24 hours ago, you said, hey, I think there's maybe a good chance that Donald Trump testifies. We now know he did not, and I get it. Nobody really knows until it happens.
Guess what? If the jury goes south, he has nobody else to blame for himself.
So I was going to say,
how do you see this? That was his decision and his decision alone to make. There are only 2 decisions in criminal defense that the defendant has the absolute right to make, and it's only his decision. 1, do I plead guilty or not guilty? Yep. And 2, do I take the stand in my own defense? He chose not to. But I wanted to say one thing, give you some inside baseball. This idea that Cohen had to call Schiller to talk to Trump, that's not the way it operates. I can tell you from personal experience. The president makes his own phone calls and takes his own phone calls. His phone number is very recognizable. When it comes up, you take it.
The White House switchboard. I mean, back when he was at the White House and he wasn't using a cell phone. I mean, just people had to go through Rona. I know Rona Graff, his EA at the time, or his sort of right-hand person.
Not his lawyers. His lawyers didn't have to.
Well, let me ask you this: as people who have defended him before, if you were taking on that job this time, and you were preparing for summations, you were preparing for this critical moment in which you're about to deliver closing arguments to a jury in this historic criminal trial, what's the thing you'd want to leave them with?
All roads lead to Cohen. And if you don't believe Cohen, you've got reasonable doubt, and it's a not guilty. But picture, and the other thing is this, the way they've charged this, it's Kafka-esque. It's like that old, I think it was Beria, the old Stalin minister who said, show me the man and I'll show you the crime. I mean, this is really bizarre that we're at closings and they're doing a multiple choice on what the crimes might be. I mean, I don't know how you could go through 20 days of trial and not know what the felony is. Well, maybe it's New York tax law. Maybe it's election interference. I mean, I don't know. I've been doing this 35 years. I've never seen anything like this.
To be clear, you're talking about, the underlying crime that prosecutors would show in order to bring these 34 counts
it would be like Hallie,
documents to a felony.
Let's say we were charged with conspiracy to take out a business competitor. So we are charged with conspiracy to assassinate X. And X has to be named. This is, well, he was going to, there's misdemeanors and there's records that are not totally up to snuff, but he was going to commit some federal crime, or maybe a state crime. We'll let you know later. I mean, that's bizarre stuff.
Final thoughts.
The closing in this case wants to focus on the 4 jury instructions. Of course, credibility of witnesses, false in one, false in no, false in all. The burden of the Commonwealth and guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. It's such a high burden. His presumption of innocence and the guilt beyond a reasonable doubt are 2 constitutional guarantees that have really dwindled away in this country. And so I think they really want to hammer that. They want to hit it. And I think they hang the jury in this thing.
Bill, Michael, thank you both for being on. Really
Thanks for
appreciate
having
giving
us.
us that insight. Thank you. Let me bring in now our legal experts here, not affiliated with anybody involved in the trial. NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalos, Georgetown law professor Michelle Goodwin. Michelle, good to see you. I'll start with you here with me on set. Talk me through how you see the next 48 hours once we do get court back in session again going.
Well, the next 48 hours will be a time in which the jurors are going to possibly be, as we've heard earlier, looking at beyond their Wordle, perhaps going online, right? Looking for what information they might be able to find. There's going to be the scrambling of the defense team. This represents one of 4 criminal trials. This is the first one. That's right. There's a lot at stake for the former president. Right. And
first one and maybe only one before the November election.
That may be the case. Keep in mind, this is also a tense time, depending upon what's going to happen with the Supreme Court, because one of those cases, the Supreme Court has an arm in, perhaps an arm, a leg, perhaps both arms and legs, and that's the one involving his defense of absolute immunity from any criminal charges of a past sitting or future president. That will matter significantly. So his defense team is worried about that as well. This may be the only one, but there is an election that is drumming up. So all of that is the backdrop beyond just what's going to happen in New York. And what's going to happen in New York is significant. His legal team is already preparing for what comes next. That's definitely going to be an appeal. And one other thing that one will add to this is that even though the judge in this case, Judge Merchan, has issued a gag order, what we've also seen is a parade of people that are pseudo-Trumps showing up, making comments outside of the courthouse, trying to appeal to Americans to see this case as being something that is trumped up and something that is political in nature.
Danny, I wonder what you make of the way that the jury instruction conversation went. And we know we're going to hear from Judge Merchan likely later on Thursday about sort of all of that. Kind of seemed like he wanted to, wherever he could, stick to the standard instructions. I wonder how you see it and what you make of this nearly week-long gap now for the jury. Do you think that'll favor one side or the other?
Let's start with the charging conference. It's not sexy. It's not exciting. You don't see it in movies or in TV shows, but it's quietly the most important part of the trial. And frankly, for me, the most stressful part of the trial as well. And what you just mentioned is key. How often do judges say, well, I'm a judge, I like to follow the pattern jury instructions. And then you spend the next 3 hours arguing about changing the pattern jury instructions. Every word counts. You heard from Mike Vanderveen, also known as the V, and Bill Brennan, and they spend days arguing over words, how much a single word can change the contours of the case. It's terrifying because jury instructions are the most common basis for appeal and for overturning convictions in appellate courts. So it is so critical, and you have no idea once a jury instruction is finalized, oh my gosh, did I just submarine my own case? You have no way of knowing because they move relatively quickly. I say that even though a charging conference can last all day. They are agony, and so critically important everywhere. And you heard, by the way, it was hard to follow on the Google Doc because it's such an in-the-weeds discussion. Yeah. Even for the lawyers, it can be difficult to follow.
Danny's talking about a Google Doc that we use here at NBC News so that our teams in court, again, no cameras are allowed inside court. That's the way that our teams are communicating with us outside of court. In the 30 seconds we have left, Michelle and Danny both, most important thing that the prosecution, Michelle, to you, would have to get across for maximum impact to the jury in their closing. What's the one thing you've got to...
The one thing is that Cohen was a credible witness, despite what the defense has done to try to, in every way, tarnish his truth, if you will.
And Danny, for the defense, is it the flip of that?
Yes. I mean, you want to hammer Cohen. You want to point out, I think I would make this an empty chair defense. Where's Alan Weisselberg? Why didn't the people call him? What are they afraid of? His fingerprints, his handwriting is literally and figuratively all over this case, including on the most damning document. Yeah. That's his handwriting, not Trump's. I'm doing my closing, Hallie. Forgive me. But that's what it would sound like.
I did say 30 seconds for the record.
Oh, and ladies and gentlemen, render a true and just verdict of not guilty. Thank you.
Danny Savalas, Michelle Goodwin, thank you both. We're going to continue to have this conversation over the next few days with the real action, of course, picking back up in about a week. Thank you both very much. I want to bring in now a team that's covered Mr. Trump in this case for years, New York Times investigative reporter Suzanne Craig and Michael Rothfeld. Thank you both for being with us. Michael is also the co-author of the book you're seeing here, The Fixers. Michael, we'll start with you because the longer title that people can see on the cover there is The Bottom Feeders, Crooked Lawyers, Gossip Mongers, and Porn Stars Who Created the 45th President. I think folks might be wondering, well, wait a second, are these really the people who could bring him down with all the legal trouble he faces? So how are you seeing it?
Well, I mean, that's what we've seen in the trial. I mean, we had a porn star testifying. We had a lawyer who has negotiated deals to suppress sex tapes testify. We had David Pecker, the king of the tabloids. This is the orbit that Trump came from before he was president, you know, as a reality star. And those associations are what has led us to this point. So we're getting a glimpse into his past life here.
Suzanne, you've been in court this whole trial, and you talked on the live blog over for the Times about sort of the vibe in and out. One of the things you said was that people have been camping on the street overnight. Some are bringing huge suitcases to store their sleeping gear. Disputes have broken out over placement in line. You think it's going to be even worse on Tuesday. Bring us there with you. We can't be there. Our viewers can't be there. What's it like?
Well, I have to say that the lines outside the courtroom started out weeks ago, and it was pretty tame, but it's really turned into the hottest ticket in town. There's people in line that are selling. They're lining up overnight. Some just kind of go from the front right to the back again to get a spot so they can get a ticket, and then they sell it. And I've heard a few tickets have gone for upwards of $2,000, but most are going for $500. There's members of the public who can get in. There's about maybe half a dozen to a dozen that actually get into the courtroom, and the rest are in an overflow room where there's a closed circuit TV where you can watch the proceedings going on. That's usually where I sit. But it's really been something just to see the interest. I think people are coming in from out of town to try and get a ticket to get in. And then once you get in, it's really interesting because the other thing that's going on inside the courtroom, at the beginning, Donald Trump was there, and occasionally his son, Eric Trump, would show up. But in recent days, you've had upwards of, a dozen or more surrogates showing up, and they sit right behind Donald Trump. So when you see him on the closed circuit, Donald Trump is at the defense table, and then there's a line. It's often 2 rows thick of his surrogates who sit behind him. You have to wonder how the jury's processing it. We don't know, but it's become more and more noticeable as the trial has gone on.
Are you at all surprised, Suzanne, that Mr. Trump did not end up testifying?
Absolutely not. And the reason why is he would have opened, he kept saying he wanted to, and I think in isolation, if he just could have gone up on the stand and made it essentially a campaign speech, it would have been fine, but he would have opened himself up to cross-examination on a number of issues he didn't want to talk about, including the E. Jean Carroll case that recently concluded with the huge damages against him, and also Trump University and a lot of chapters in his past that I don't think he wants to revisit.
Michael, zoom out for us a bit here because on the big picture legal trouble, if you will, because a lot of that is less certain now. You've got trial dates for the Georgia election case, the federal classified documents case, the federal January 6th case, all up in the air right now. For years, Donald Trump has faced legal issues. He's faced legal trouble. For the first time now, there is a non-zero chance that he could end up convicted of one of these things. Put that into context.
Well, I think it's a big deal. He really has sort of evaded any sort of repercussions for, from a criminal perspective after years of investigations. And if this is the only trial before the election, I mean, we know from polling that a lot of Republican moderates who he needs to win the election have said that they would not vote if he's convicted of a felony. I mean, he's unlikely to go to prison or anything like that before the election, and it's certainly not going to inhibit him from running. But it definitely could make a big impact, on the race.
Michael Rothfeld, Suzanne Craig, thanks to both of you for being with us here during our special coverage of Donald Trump's first criminal trial. Thank you. We've got a lot of other big headlines tonight. We're going to catch you up on all of it when we pick up our regular programming right after the break. We are coming on the air with multiple tornadoes touching down in Iowa as as we speak. Violent storms rocking the Midwest, torrential rain coming down in other parts of the country. We've got to look tonight at just how bad things could get. Plus, one person dead after extreme turbulence on a Singapore Airlines flight. This usually doesn't happen, so how dangerous was this moment? We're going to explain how this went down. Then the far-right group traveling across the country, pushing for laws that would put women behind bars for getting an abortion. How they're taking things into their own hands in tonight's original. And the world's biggest food company launching a new line aimed at profiting from people taking weight loss drugs. That's coming up a little later in the show. Hey, I'm Hallie, and as we're coming on the air, we are watching tornadoes touching down in Iowa right now. I want to show you one near Red Oak not too long ago. This is about an hour outside Omaha. There's a tornado watch for basically the whole state tonight. I want to show you another look here. People watching a tornado move through, a twister just ripped through this afternoon. The whole middle of the country is facing this week-long pounding of bad weather. 50 million people at risk for intense storms stretching all the way from Texas to Michigan. We do have a team in the region. I have to tell you, they are taking shelter right now while storms are moving through. It's not safe for them to go live, which is why meteorologist Bill Cairns is joining us tonight. We're also glad to have you, Bill. Talk us through where the worst weather is right now and where folks are really bracing for it.
All of our thoughts and prayers right now are for Greenfield, Iowa. It's a town, small town, southwest Iowa, only 2,000 residents. And the pictures I've seen there, they just took a direct hit from a violent multi-vortex tornado. The bark on the trees has been stripped from the pictures I've seen. And when we clear those pictures, we'll show you them. There's just debris and everything everywhere. So what you're seeing there, that's kind of a typical tornado. You know, that's maybe an EF1 or an EF2. That could obviously damage and destroy a house. That's not the type of tornado that would destroy a whole town. But we have had one of those today. And, you know, this is what we were afraid of going into the day today. So we'll continue. There'll be a lot of pictures coming in, and a lot of them are going to be unpleasant to see as we go throughout the next couple hours. That's the one that was in Red Oak. That was the first tornado of the day, by the way. And now, if we go to our maps, we've had 9 reported. So here's Quincy. This is the southwest corner of Iowa. And then you can see all these little red icons. This is where all the tornadoes were reported, right there. Ding, 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 ding. All in the same spot. And that's where Greenfield field is located. And now these storms are almost right over the top of Des Moines. So here's the big picture. We have what we call a PDS tornado watch, particularly dangerous situation. That means violent tornadoes are possible from now till at least 9 p.m. Central Time, with these storms crossing through Des Moines, and they'll head all the way towards the Quad Cities. We also have a watch, tornado watch, possible for areas of Missouri, all the way back down to northern Arkansas, all the way back up into Minnesota and into areas of southern Wisconsin. But we're going to focus on where the violent tornadoes could be, and we have numerous red polygons here, 1, 2, 3, 4 active tornado warnings on this line, which means we could have tornadoes right now on the ground. Here's the Des Moines area. The city itself is actually in a severe thunderstorm warning, not in a tornado warning. That's the orange you see here. But this storm heading right over the top of Indianola, this is what was the deadly, we don't know deadly yet, I should say that, potentially deadly tornado that went through Greenfield. And now that is going to head towards Indianola. Up to the north of this, the northern suburbs above Des Moines, this is where the radar is located. You see that little circle there? That's why it kind of looks a little funny. So the actual storm's heading right over the top of our Doppler radar, and that area is under a tornado warning just to the northern suburbs of Des Moines. So, Hallie, as we went into today, we knew that violent tornadoes were possible. We've definitely had at least one. You know, when we see a tree that the wind was strong enough to take the bark off the tree, oof, that's a scary scene, and that makes it hard for anyone to survive that tornado unless they were underground. And that's the scenario where the search and rescue is taking place right now in southwest Iowa.
We're going to be asking you to come back for any updates as you get them, Bill, the second that you do. Thank you very much for being there with us, and obviously thinking of the folks on the ground there. Appreciate it. Got to take you now to this super scary scene on a flight from London to Singapore. Deadly turbulence. At least one person was killed, dozens of others seriously hurt. Check out how chaotic it was. You had people getting carried out on stretchers. At one point, you saw luggage just having spilled out everywhere, pieces of the cabin out that seemed to be broken up. That's after the plane carrying more than 200 people went bucking up and down before an emergency landing after 31,000 feet went into Bangkok, all of it happening in just minutes. We got to be really clear here. It is very unusual for somebody to die from something like this. Right now, we don't know a lot about what happened other than that the victim was a 73-year-old British man. The airport GM says he probably had a heart attack. You can see the path of where that emergency landing happened. At least 30 other people were scrambled to the hospital, with other reports of heads slamming into the cabins above their seats. You're seeing what looks like some oxygen masks that came down. Some people getting thrown straight up, reportedly. I want to bring in Tom Costello. Very scary to see these images. A lot of concern about it. What else do we know?
This happened on the route from London to Singapore. This was a Boeing 777, very strong, very sturdy aircraft. It hit extreme turbulence at 37,000 feet. Here's the problem with turbulence. It's very difficult to predict it, right? You can have meteorologists saying you might want to steer clear of these particular cloud structures, but the only way you know for sure that there is bad turbulence ahead is if somebody ahead calls and says, get out of the way. You might want to reroute, and that is clearly what air traffic control tries to do all the time. We don't know if this crew had a heads up that they were headed into severe turbulence. I talked to Flight Radar 24. They monitor all these flights worldwide. They describe this as a bucking bronco, that the plane was coming in like this and suddenly was up and then down and then up and then down, 400 feet, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. Now, the descent you mentioned, 37,000 feet down to 31,000 feet, that was a controlled emergency descent on autopilot that the pilot initiated. That in and of itself was not the turbulence, but he had to get that plane down fast. He had medical emergencies.
To get away from where the turbulence was.
Correct, right. And he had a medical emergency on board, so he declared a mass casualty event. They landed in Bangkok. I got to say, watching the video, the EMS response on the ground in Bangkok, very impressive. As for the passenger, though, the 73-year-old British man, all evidence at this point is that this was a cardiac event. It may have been triggered by the turbulence, but it appears he had a cardiac event and died.
There's been this discussion about, an air pocket or air pockets, plural, in the jet stream. Help a layperson understand how that plays into this here.
Well, listen, air pockets are everywhere, and that's why whenever you're flying, sometimes you feel a bump. That's an air pocket, right? If the pilot is suddenly surprised by it, if he or she didn't get the radio call, you and I have both been on flights where a pilot says, seatbelts, and then you immediately strap. You should have already been buckled in. The point is he gets surprised. This turbulence is not unusual. This was severe turbulence, and it happens around really big storm structures, and it's gotten worse with climate change. That's what matters. In fact, the jet stream and the vibrations, if you will, the violence, 15% stronger today than back in the 1970s.
Tom Costello, thank you so much for being all over this story for us. I know more to come, and you will bring it to us as we get it. Thank you, friend.
You bet.
Let's get you over to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, officials are now looking into who gave Matthew Perry the ketamine that apparently ultimately killed him. You'll remember that Perry, of course, the star of Friends, one of the stars, died back in October at his home. The coroner ruled his death an accident, but whoever provided the drugs could face criminal charges. Number 2, the DOJ, the Justice Department, today suing Oklahoma over a new state law that makes it a crime to live there without having legal immigration status. People who break this law could face up to 2 years in prison. Earlier this year, the Justice Department sued Iowa and Texas over similar laws. Number 3, take a look at all these French railway workers who just started striking. They want more money for the extra work they're doing around the Paris Olympics. The strike having an impact on travel in a big way. The National Railway Company is going to meet with unions tomorrow to try to come to a deal. Number 4, the NRA just electing new leadership after its former CEO, Wayne LaPierre, resigned and was found liable in a multi-million-dollar civil lawsuit we've told you about. A longtime NRA insider and former congressman set to take over. Number 5, Caitlin Clark signing a multi-year deal with Wilson to get her very own line of basketballs. She's also going to test and give feedback on a bunch of Wilson products. Her signature line will come out later this year, and Wilson will put out some collections celebrating Clark throughout the year. Not clear how much the deal is worth in dollars, but probably priceless to a lot of her fans. When we come back, some late word out of Israel as we've been on the air. The quick reversal it's just making on a move against the media covering the war. That's next. Israel, in just the last hour, reversing its decision to take a camera and some other gear from the Associated Press in southern Israel after coming under some pressure from the U.S., meaning that video equipment that officials just took from the AP is going to get taken back to them just hours after the Israeli leadership accused the AP of violating its new media law by giving images to Al Jazeera. That's the latest in this big feud between Israel and Al Jazeera, which is owned by the Qataris. We should note Al Jazeera is one of AP's clients, and so is NBC News. The Associated Press blasting the government over what initially happened, calling it an abusive use of Israel's new law. And now Israel says it'll re-examine the risks that these live cameras may have on IDF troops and its military operations. All of it as Israel's dealing with the fallout from the ICC, the International Criminal Court, now seeking arrest warrants for the Israeli prime minister and other top leaders for alleged war crimes. At a pretty tense Senate hearing today in Washington, Secretary of State Tony Blinken said the ICC's decision is, in his words, extremely wrong-headed. And Prime Minister Netanyahu, with NBC's Stephanie Roll over on MSNBC, rejecting those claims.
Yes, sir, but hold on.
So those trucks can go in.
But we've already heard U.S. aid has said famine is present. We've heard from Cindy McCain, who runs the World Food Program, who has said there's massive famine there. Are you saying that they're lying?
I'm saying that Cindy McCain, unfortunately, is misinformed, and I'm saying that the facts prove otherwise.
Raf Sanchez has more from the region.
Israel today facing new accusations of cracking down on the free press just weeks after its government banned Al Jazeera. Today, the Associated Press news agency says Israeli government officials shut down one of its live shot positions and confiscated a camera and other equipment. Now, the Israeli government says that this camera was putting out a live feed of northern Gaza, where Israeli forces are currently operating, and then that feed was being taken up by Al Jazeera, among others. It says that it gave the Associated Press a warning before moving ahead and closing this down. But free press groups here in Israel and internationally are decrying the move. You might remember back in Israel, back in 2021, Israeli forces bombed an office building used by the Associated Press, the main American news agency in Gaza. Israel said at the time that that building was being used by Hamas, but it comes at a time when Israel is under more scrutiny globally. The prosecutor of the International Criminal Court seeking the arrest of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Israel's defense minister, as well as 3 senior leaders in Hamas. Prime Minister Netanyahu pushing back very hard, calling this a rogue prosecutor who is unfairly going after the democratically elected leader of a country that is fighting a defensive war after October 7th. President Biden also saying he rejects any equivalence between Israel and Hamas. But the prosecutor is saying the Israeli government, led by Netanyahu, deliberately starved the people of Gaza by choking off food supplies, and at certain points intentionally targeted Palestinian civilians in Gaza. Those are allegations Israel denies. The prosecutor also accusing Hamas leaders of crimes including rape, torture, murder, and hostage-taking. Hamas, for its part, denouncing the International Criminal Court. Back to you.
Our thanks to Raf Sanchez for that reporting. NBC News covers hundreds of stories every day. And because it can be tough to read or watch or listen to them all, our bureau teams have done it for you. This is what they tell us is going down in their regions in a segment we call The Local. Out of our Western Bureau, a grizzly bear attacking somebody at Grand Teton National Park in Wyoming, which shut down one of the mountains there. The man was badly hurt and went to the hospital, but park officials say he is expected to recover. We don't know exactly why the bear attacked. Also out of our Western Bureau, take a look at this. Firefighters in Colorado rescuing somebody trapped inside, yes, a trash truck. The local fire department says the man had been in a dumpster overnight. In the morning, trash collectors picked it up. The driver eventually heard the man calling for help and fortunately dialed 911. Rescuers managed to get him out. And out of our Midwest Bureau, look at this, a rare blue-eyed cicada reportedly spotted near Chicago. Wow, that is unnerving. It's also 1 in a million, according to experts, who don't really know why a cicada would have blue eyes instead of, as you see here, the usual red. It's coming at a historic moment for cicadas, with 2 kinds showing up simultaneously for the first time since Thomas Jefferson was president. Coming up in tonight's original, our team's investigation into a far-right group pushing for the most extreme abortion laws. Stay with us. So tonight's original now, with in-depth reporting on a topic we've been watching, an NBC News investigation tonight into a far-right group pushing for the criminalization of women who receive abortions. Operation Save America, going state by state, advocating for the most extreme laws to do just that, because they don't think the Republican Party is doing enough. Our own Stephanie Gosk talked with the man leading it all.
The overturning of Roe v. Wade didn't end the battle over abortion access. It just ignited another fierce round of fighting. And the issue remains front and center as the country heads into the 2024 elections. At the state level, the fight is the grittiest.
Is it murder?
Absolutely.
This is Jason Storms, director of Operation Save America, who publicly advocates extreme positions on a number of issues.
Revolution 2.0 going on right here. So we're talking about the very real possible reality that we have to take up arms against our own tyrannical government, and are we prepared to do it and win?
With OSA, he travels around the country to lobby for legislation that could put women in jail, or worse, for getting an abortion.
You are intentionally killing a human being. That is the definition of murder.
Should that person be charged and convicted for murder?
Absolutely.
Prison for life?
Well, whatever the laws are for killing an innocent person, yeah.
In some places, that's the death penalty.
Absolutely.
At the national level, OSA's message is a potential thorn in Republicans' side at a time when some in the party are concerned the abortion issue is bad politics, even moderating their positions as elections get closer.
A full ban on abortion is not where the people are.
It's way more extreme than what Arizonans want.
How you doing?
But Storms has found support at the state level, and he's pushing to get more.
Are there politicians who you have helped get elected who are fighting your cause?
Yes.
We have legislative efforts going in 18 different states. On the ground, we mobilize hundreds of people.
There have been more than 24 bills introduced in states around the country in the last 2 years that would open the door for a woman to be investigated and even prosecuted.
Now we've had 14 states presently that have banned abortion. And so while that is a step in the right direction to put abortion under our homicide statutes, it's illegal for a doctor to perform an abortion in 14 states. But in all those states, the mothers are explicitly exempted from any punishment or any legal accountability.
And you don't think that should be the case?
Not at all.
Operation Rescue.
OSA is the rebranded version of Operation Rescue, active in the 1980s. In the following decade, tensions over the abortion issue ran high, and doctors were even killed. Neither Operation Rescue nor OSA were ever involved in violence against clinic operators, says Storms. Now, a handful of people connected with OSA have been convicted of violating the FACE Act, which outlaws obstructing women's access to clinics, and they are awaiting sentencing.
Well, I'm looking at 22 years in federal prison. That's what I'm looking at. I wish I could have done more pro-life ministry, and I have zero regrets.
Yeah, meetings were good, very productive.
In Ohio, Storms brought his followers and his family to the state capitol, including several of his 11 children, to lobby lawmakers.
Keep up the good fight.
He had meetings with at least 3 state representatives. Last November, Ohio passed a constitutional amendment protecting abortion access up to 22 weeks. One of the lawmakers behind it, State Representative Anita Somani, an OBGYN.
If you look at the statistics for last November, 57% of people in Ohio voted for the constitutional amendment protecting the right to abortion. That is not a minority. That is a majority of people.
Storms told us he's in Ohio because he believes the Republican Party failed in mobilizing the anti-abortion vote.
The Republican Party did not put the money and the resources into this fight in the way that the Democratic Party did to win here.
Do you think there's a possibility that a majority of people in this state just simply don't agree with you, Jason?
That's certainly possible, of course. But this is a very red state. Donald Trump won huge in this state, and pro-life people dominate all aspects of state government here.
Hey guys, we're going to round everybody up here and pray.
From the Capitol building in Columbus, OSA drove to Cincinnati and showed up at Planned Parenthood.
And there will be consequence to shedding of innocent blood.
The right to walk down the sidewalk. Y'all can't block the sidewalks. You gotta let people walk down the sidewalk.
The group protested at 2 clinics in the area, including this one in Dayton.
Your father
Whether you want to be or not, you already are a father.
We did not film the multiple women who walked inside.
There have been times when it gets loud, when there's a bit of shouting. Does it become intimidation?
On our part?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't think so, no. I mean, that's counterproductive to what we're trying to accomplish.
How about harassment?
Of course not, no.
But later that afternoon, we caught up with one of the clinic's doctors.
Did anyone come in today and say, God, that was really hard coming in here?
Multiple people said it was a really hard thing to come in today.
Did your patients feel like they were harassed and intimidated today?
Yes.
So we pray that souls will come to know you today.
Storm says it's important not just to pressure the women who are going in to get abortions, but also try to convince young people on college campuses and even at high schools.
Planned Parenthood is feeding propaganda to these kids. We're trying to counter that message.
But what matters most, he says, is pressuring the politicians who are running for office. And at the top of his list is Donald Trump.
We're pressuring Donald Trump right now. And a lot of us are threatening to withhold our votes from him and saying, you're not going to get our vote if you're not going to stand strong in defense of preborn children.
But if he does not, will you stay home?
Yes.
You won't vote that day?
Well, I'll vote for a third party.
He says he doesn't believe Trump is going far enough. All the presumptive nominee has said is it's in the state's hands.
The states will determine by vote or legislation or perhaps both, and whatever they decide must be the law of the land.
Storms voted for Donald Trump in 2020, even showing up at the rally outside the U.S. Capitol on January 6th.
We're at the Capitol. A bunch of guys rushed in, got into the rotunda, overtook the building. They got tear gassed.
In battleground states, the margins are razor thin. Every vote counts. Doctors and lawmakers who've devoted their lives to supporting a woman's right to abortion access worry politicians might court extreme views on abortion just for the votes. Views like Jason Storms.
My question to you is, why should your version of Christianity and what you see as the beginning of autonomous life be what governs the whole country when we have a country that's based on freedom of religion?
Because we believe it's true.
Stephanie Gosk is joining us now. Steph, thanks for being with us here. You raised the question to Mr. Storms there about whether his position is out of step with the majority of where Americans are right now, based on polling as it relates to abortion access. And you explained that he is not happy with former President Trump for his position on abortion access. Here we are in an election year, months away from an election. Talk to us more about that piece of it.
Yeah, sure. I mean, for a lot of people in this country who were, against abortion access in this country, they thought the overturning of Roe v. Wade was just a step towards a national ban. Now, not all of those people have the kind of extreme views we heard from Storms, including prosecuting a woman for murder in the event that she got an abortion. But they certainly were looking for a national ban. And I think that there is a growing level of disappointment among these people that a national ban is kind of off the table for a lot of Republicans who are, at a bare minimum, acknowledging, Hallie, that this is not a good political issue for them. You obviously heard President Trump backing off any talk of a national ban, saying it's in the state's hands. What's unclear, and a question for a lot of Republicans, is whether that's going to keep people home or keep them from voting, in the election.
Stephanie Gosk, thank you very much for bringing us that reporting. We'll be right back. The world's biggest food company tonight is announcing a new line of frozen options aimed at the growing number of people who are using weight loss drugs like Ozempic and Wegovy. The new brand is set to roll out later on this year with 12 products to start: frozen bowls with whole grains or pasta, sandwiches, pizzas, etc., plus some gluten-free options that Nestle says will only cost about $5. Brian Chung is joining us now. Okay, the reason I think why this is elevated from like a sort of commercial to a news story is the business angle, right? There's a lot of companies who are already in this market trying to make money off of different diets that people have. This one is interesting because it is specifically aimed at people who are on some of these new weight loss products.
Yeah, and we've been talking a lot on this program and many other programs as well about the growth of these GLP-1 products that have really spurred these weight loss movements. But now we're seeing kind of on the periphery of these, all of these other industries that are trying to tack onto this trend as well, food being the biggest one. So you have Nestle here saying, all right, we're going to offer these meals that kind of supplement the weight loss journey, is how they describe it, that people who are using Wegovy or Ozempic will be on. And in one example that they kind of cited here, well, if you are cutting back on food broadly speaking, how do you know that you're getting all the nutrients that you need elsewhere? So these types of meals might prioritize, for example, protein. You can see the chicken there. But again, weight loss in America, this is a very big trend with the proliferation of these types of drugs. 49% of adults saying they've tried to lose weight. You have 30 million predicted by 2030, according to JP Morgan, that could be on these GLP-1 drugs. And for food makers like Nestle, you're trying to capitalize on that as well, Hallie.
It's not like they're going to be sold in packaging that has a big stamp that says, like, for Ozempic users or anything, right? I mean, it's going to be a little more subtle than that.
No, not at all. I think that the branding of this is going to be, I think, Vital Pursuit is the way they're going to call it. It's going to be unveiled by the end of the year, but I think the pricing is very important here as well. You have inflation pinching a lot of wallets. They plan on selling these meals at about $5 a pop, and you can see the types of offerings that they have. There are bowls, there are pizzas as well, so the lifestyle very much a big part of this as well. But again, the big story here, Hallie, is really all about the proliferation of these drugs and the types of products like in food that are likely to be associated with this as well. A lot of companies trying to make sure they can cash in if that does become a big profit maker.
Brian Chung, thank you very much. Appreciate it. That does it for us for this hour. We've got more coverage picking up right now. We are coming on the air with intense and potentially deadly tornadoes ripping through Iowa. We've got new video just coming into us with more on the dangerous night that could be ahead for millions in the Midwest. Plus, the fate of former President Trump, almost in the hands of a New York jury. We'll talk about what happens next in his criminal trial that is now nearing its end. Plus, Louisiana lawmakers right now debating a bill that would criminalize abortion pills, certain abortion drugs, in a state that already has a near total ban. We'll take you live to Baton Rouge. Then criminal charges may be coming in the death of Friends star Matthew Perry. But we're just learning tonight about a new investigation into how he died. Plus, the fight to save Graceland, how Elvis Presley's granddaughter is trying to keep that house off the auction block, a little bit later on in the show. Hey, I'm Hallie, and as we come on the air, we're seeing nearly a dozen tornado reports just in Iowa tonight with a new look at some of the damage. I want to show you some of the live pictures coming out of the city of Greenfield right now. It is a gut punch to see those images, to see those houses destroyed like that. It is devastating. This is a town of about 2,000 people, about an hour west of Des Moines, about an hour, a little bit further south of there in Carbon. This is a close-up shot of one of the twisters going across a road. You can see all that debris ripping around in the air, ripping up a house right along the way. And the aftermath of that, this home shredded in something like 3 seconds. There's a tornado watch for basically all of Iowa tonight, with the whole middle of the country facing a week-long pounding. This bad weather, so intense, so relentless, with more than 50 million people at risk, stretching all the way from Texas to Michigan tonight. We do have a team in the region. I have to tell you, they are taking shelter while the storms are moving through right now. Their safety is paramount, so they are doing that. In the meantime, I want to bring in meteorologist Bill Cairns, because, Bill, about 35 minutes ago, you and I talked about the situation in Greenfield because it is breaking news. We are now seeing that live picture coming out of there, and it is very scary.
Yeah, re-roll the pictures of this.
Yeah, we're pulling it up.
Yeah, so the things that, as a meteorologist, that we watch and would look for, immediately my eyes go to the trees, and you can see the trees to the right look like they're untouched. You can actually see a house on the back right that looks like it was completely untouched. So there's not even a shingle missing on that roof from this distance. And then where the heart of the tornado went through, you can see there's barely any tree branches left on what was mature large trees. And if you look closely, you can see some spots on those trees where the bark has been peeled off the trees. That means this was a violent tornado. It has to be at least what we'd call an EF3, possibly an EF4. Now, there's something called a Doppler on wheels. Everything you see on the weather when we show you the radar, where the rain is, the green on the maps, that's from our Doppler radar that scans the sky. Well, there's actually a truck with one of them that's chasing today's storms. It was really close to that Greenfield tornado, and they measured winds to 210 miles per hour, only 600 feet off the ground. Why is that relevant? Well, an EF5 is extremely rare. That's the strongest. It's almost like a Cat 5 hurricane, and they measured winds that high only 600 feet off the ground. So that's how we know that Greenfield tornado is going to go down as one of the strongest ever to hit in areas of Iowa. And when you see this was a wide multi-vortex tornado that just crossed the road right ahead there. You can see, again, look at the trees. You can see the extreme damage, obviously, to the homes. Homes are tricky because you don't know how well they are manufactured, but when you look at the trees, that's the telltale sign of how strong all these tornadoes are. So we're talking about dozens and dozens of families whose lives have been upended, and there's search and rescue going on. We have no idea about injuries or fatalities, but when you get with tornadoes this strong that hit this many people, it's hard not to, unfortunately. So let me catch you up on the concerns right now in Ankeny. So here's Des Moines. There's Ames up to the north, way above the S. This is Ankeny heading up the highway here. 2 reports of a tornado in the last 30 minutes. This area has been reported a large, very destructive tornado on the ground just outside of Huxley. And so you see where Zeering is here in State College. This would be that strong tornado right in here. And as it's heading north, this one is showing signs of being another violent tornado that could do damage similar to the pictures that we just showed you. So we're going to have to watch this area again. State Center. Everyone here has to be underground if possible. Interior room of your house, you may not even survive this when this comes up over the top of you. Further to the south, we've had on and off reports of tornadoes with this one. This is going to cross Interstate 80 towards Newton here shortly. Again, severe thunderstorm warning with this right now. No tornado warning. That has since been dropped. And if we look at all the tornado reports that we've been seeing, they've all been this area here that we're showing you around the Greenfield area. We've had about 10 reports of tornadoes from that area. Some of them may have been the same twister. And you can see these pictures coming into us here. Obviously, we got helicopters coming in, assisting with the search and rescue if people need to get to any local hospitals in the region. Greenfield is in southwest portion of Iowa. It is a small town. Only about 2,000 residents call this home. We don't know yet how wide the tornado was, how much of the town has been destroyed. From these pictures that we're showing you, it's at least dozens of homes, if not more. On radar, we got something called debris balls. We can actually see how much debris goes up into the sky. And when it hit Greenfield, a ton of debris got lifted off the ground from the destroyed structures, the trees, and then lifted up into the sky. So, Hallie, we'll end it on this. We're not done, unfortunately. We could see more pictures like this. This particularly dangerous situation with the storms that just cleared Des Moines are heading towards the Quad Cities in southern Wisconsin over the next 4 hours. So we're not done yet. Unfortunately, this has already been a huge tragedy, and our worst fears come true. We'll see what happens in the next couple hours.
Bill, I just want to go back to those live pictures for a second to explain to people, because I talked about how our crews are taking shelter, which is the case. These pictures are coming to us out of our affiliate, WHO-TV. That's the NBC affiliate there out of Des Moines, Iowa. So Greenfield, as you know, as you noted, is about an hour, I think, driving distance west of Des Moines. They've got, it looks like just a crew, probably a one-man band out there getting this live shot off, looking at some of the damage that we've seen. And it is critically important as we're looking now at some of these folks, potentially first responders walking around, maybe people in town. We don't know who they are. It is super important for folks to be able to see these pictures, to get a first look at just how bad the damage is, Bill.
And Hallie, what typically happens in these small towns is, you know, they're not going to, if they're doing search and rescue, they don't want reporters clogging the small streets of this town anyways. So this may be the outskirts of town, as far in as our reporters can go and can go look. You know, you see people just going through, you know, who knows what they're looking for, maybe possessions, pets sometimes in cases like this. So yes, this is our first glimpse of the damage in Greenfield. We don't know how extensive it is to this small town. You can only imagine what these people are going through, just shell-shocked. First off, they're probably just thankful for their lives. They survived the storm. And you can imagine the stories that a lot of these people had. And they could have been relatives from outside of the town that have now come into the town to help with search and rescue. I mean, you can't even tell what it looked like before.
As you say, a devastating, potentially worst-case scenario. We're going to continue to report out what happened there in that town and in so many others, as the danger obviously is not over yet. Bill, thank you. We want to thank, obviously, those folks out with WHO-TV bringing us those images. Lots of thoughts and prayers going out to Greenfield tonight. Thanks, Bill. To New York now, to the East Coast, to downtown Manhattan, and Donald Trump's criminal trial, which is just one step away now from heading to a jury, right? As soon as they hammer out the jury instructions and then give closing arguments. Jury instructions, we don't talk about them a lot. They're not like the stuff movies are made of. They're super long and technical, but super important. And that was how he closed out the day, as you see former President Trump walking out of court just within the last 90 minutes, reversing himself and deciding not to testify before his defense rested its case. He never said why not, but his son, Don Jr., making the case for him.
You're going in a kangaroo court. There's nothing more, nothing less. There's absolutely no reason, no justification to do that whatsoever.
And no indication, no evidence to support that claim. The decision means we finish this stage of the trial with 16 days of testimony, 22 total witnesses, 2 of them from the defense team, the rest from the prosecution. The last one for the defense, Robert Costello, the former legal advisor to Michael Cohen. He was sassy in the courtroom yesterday. He was sassy in the courtroom today, at one point even rolling his eyes as prosecutors went after his credibility. You can see him here accusing him of trying to intimidate Cohen, with Costello calling that claim ridiculous. All that said, most of the day, most of the afternoon, boy, we were deep in the weeds with the judge working with both sides to try to hash out jury instructions. Let's be real, not spicy, not dramatic, but critical, because this lays out exactly how the jury should approach these historic 34 felony charges that Mr. Trump pleaded not guilty to. So if you're thinking, like me, well, what does this mean for what's next? What's the timeline here? Closing arguments are up on Tuesday, so a week from today. That's when we expect. You see the word summations, that's closing arguments. That means the jury could get this case either that night or the day after. In between, of course, is the long Memorial Day weekend coming up. Maybe relaxing for you and me, maybe less so for those 12 everyday New Yorkers. The teacher, the salesman, the speech therapist, more. Because they're going to have this big question hanging over them over the holiday. Will you vote to convict a former president? Laura Jarrett is outside the courthouse. Laura, speaking to a layperson here, help us break down what this jury instruction process means and where the judge landed on it all.
Well, Hallie, the whole point of the jury instruction process is actually to make what is really complex really simple, right? These are people who actually do include 2 lawyers, but pretend for a moment that it's just 12 regular people who know nothing about the law. The law is going to be instructed by the judge here, and he's going to break it all down for them, taking really complex subjects and making them very, very simple. Now, there was a big fight today about the contours of what that will involve, Hallie, because this case is messy, and the defense wants to make sure that they can get every part of this in their advantage. But, of course, the prosecution wants to make sure the law is on their side as well. And as on balance, Hallie, I would say the prosecution won more of those arguments today on the jury instructions and the legal rules than the defense did, Hallie.
The big headline right before we went into jury instructions was the defense resting its case after bringing forward its 2 witnesses there and Donald Trump not testifying. Now, half of the defense witnesses, right, meaning the one person, Robert Costello, continued to be, I think it's fair to say, pretty, aggressive on the stand? We've said the word sassy. Like, how would you characterize that? Yeah, talk that through. What impact that can have on a jury?
Well, I would say yesterday he was even more so, right? We all know that the judge was so angered by his behavior and his demeanor. He called it, quote, contemptuous, meaning he had basically been held in contempt of court and kicked off the stand. He didn't do that. And when he came today, he was a little bit tamer, but as you mentioned, still rolling his eyes. His general disposition is just a little bit irritated. And I think this is not lost on the jury. You know, you hear lawyers sometimes liken the judge to almost a parental figure, a father figure, if you will. The jury is taking their cues from the judge and his disposition. And so if the judge seems a little bit irked, the jury is not going to look kindly on that. Now, they were still inscrutable today, Hallie, not really showing any emotion during Costello's testimony. And I continue to think he was a double-edged sword. I continue to think he was sort of a mixed bag. He offered a little bit of something for everybody, and I'm not sure that the jury is going to take him as favoring necessarily one side over the other.
So then look ahead, Laura, because a week from today, you and I are going to be having the conversation, honestly, probably in New York, about closing arguments and what we heard from the prosecution and the defense. Does the jury get the case after getting charged with those jury instructions that night, the next day? Like, what should we be expecting after Memorial Day?
It kind of depends on how long the closing arguments go, and honestly, this is one where they could go all day. Closing arguments, summations, if you will, are always important, but in a case like this that is so messy, it's not straightforward, prosecutors are going to have to take their time and really walk them through what the theory of the case is. Because remember, this is about the falsification of business records, but this jury heard a lot of information that has nothing to do with the falsification of business records. And so, Hallie, they're going to need to tie a bow on this because really Cohen was their only direct witness. A lot of other stuff came in. They're going to have to try to wrap this up. Now, if they can get it all done in a day, then the jury might actually get charged, meaning they'll hear the jury instructions, with the judge said is going to take roughly an hour. But if for whatever reason the closing arguments say they take up all day on Tuesday, then we might be into Wednesday before they actually get the jury instructions. And then only after that, Hallie, will they actually be able to go back in that room, those 12 everyday people, and actually decide to reach a verdict here.
Laura Jarrett, who's been in court for us the whole time. Most important question, Laura, does this mean that you might at least get one day off later this week?
Not so fast. There's plenty to do. I got to go study those jury instructions.
All right, girl. Thank you. Laura Jarrett, we appreciate all of your reporting, all of your legal reported analysis as well. Appreciate it. We'll talk again soon. Let's take you over to the campaign trail now, because the former president may not be there. He's in court, but the current president is President Biden, and he is laying into his Republican opponent. Why? For the video, you see it here, posted on Mr. Trump's social media account with all those fake headlines in the event he wins, with one sticking out. You see it here. Do you see those words? Unified Reich. That word typically associated with Nazi Germany. The Biden team noticed, with Vice President Kamala Harris slamming Mr. Trump in just the last couple hours for this at a campaign event in Philadelphia. Listen.
This kind of rhetoric is unsurprising coming from the former president, and it is appalling. And we got to tell him who we are.
Mike Memoli is traveling with the president in Nashua, New Hampshire tonight. And, men, let me put up the Trump team's response to this, saying it's not a campaign video. It was created by some account, reposted by a staffer who they say didn't see the word. But clearly it is bad enough that they are, in fact, responding to it, taking it down. Talk to us about the pattern here for the former president on this kind of thing, references to Nazis.
Well, Hallie, I mean, this is a razor-close election, and President Biden is on, right now, the losing end of more polls than he's on the winning end of. And so you see this full-court press from the Biden team to try to remind the public of what they say is a pattern of this kind of inflammatory rhetoric from the former president. So you heard the comments from the vice president. The second gentleman, Doug Emhoff, out with a video tonight calling for the former president a known anti-Semite. And just in the last few minutes, we've got this new video from President Biden taking those comments on from President Trump directly. Take a listen.
Is this on his official account? Wow. A unified Reich? That's Hitler's language. That's not America's. He cares about holding on to power. I care about you.
President Biden making similar comments just a few moments ago as well at a closed-door fundraiser. He also cited reports in which Donald Trump had said in the past that Hitler did some very good things. And there's more where that came from. Hallie, you know this well, having covered the former president. The Biden team has seized on him referring to the Biden administration as Gestapo, talking about immigrants as having poisoned the blood of America. And then there's, of course, that moment, that rhetoric from Donald Trump when he was president that Joe Biden has said is what motivated him to run in the 2020 election. It was when he equated those neo-Nazi demonstrators in Charlottesville, Virginia, with those counter-protesters saying there were very fine people on both sides. Expect the Biden team to continue to go after this whenever they see it.
Well, this and other issues, too, including the issue of abortion access, which Democrats, the Biden campaign, thinks could be politically advantageous for them come November. There's this interview that Mr. Trump gave to a local station out in Pittsburgh where he was asked specifically about birth control, about contraception. Let me play it.
Do you support any restrictions on a person's right to contraception?
Well, we're looking at that, and I'm going to have a policy on that very shortly. And I think it's something that you'll find interesting.
So shortly, it turned out to be merely hours later that you saw Mr. Trump kind of playing cleanup on that.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, you see the Trump campaign coming out with a statement saying that there would never be any restrictions on reproductive health care, or excuse me, at least on this kind of treatment. But what's notable here, Hallie, is that when you're in President Biden's shoes, anytime you're an incumbent president running for re-election, you're always playing defense on a lot of issues. And this is one issue where they know that they have to stay on offense. They really do feel like it's their ace in the hole. And so you have a statement from the Biden campaign seizing on these Trump comments, talking about how women in America are already living in a post-Roe nightmare, and that this is an example of how, in their view, Biden would go even further. And so even though we don't always hear President Biden as the lead messenger when it comes to reproductive rights, this is something that the campaign is certainly going to seize on as well.
Ma'am, super quick, just because I have to point it out, you are traveling with the president in New Hampshire for issues related not to abortion access or to Donald Trump and his references to Nazi Germany.
Yeah, that's right. This all came as the president was trying to highlight what he considers a major accomplishment. This is the PACT Act, which expands benefits for those veterans who were exposed to toxic chemicals like the president's son, Beau Biden, was when he served in Iraq. This is an issue that's very personal for him. And this event comes not just on the eve of Memorial Day, but on the eve of the 9th anniversary of the president losing his son to brain cancer. Hallie.
Mike Memoli live for us there in Nashua. Mem, thank you. Let's take you overseas now, where huge crowds, thousands of people showing up today for the funeral of the Iranian president after he and 7 others were killed in a helicopter crash on Sunday. You saw crowds filling up the area. You see some of it here where this procession was happening in a city near the crash site, not far from it. You see people holding flowers, others trying to touch the coffins of those who died as that truck passes by. This is the first of several funeral events happening over the course of the next 5 days. Remember, Iranian state media says the crash happened as the helicopter was flying through soupy fog, really thick fog, really bad weather. And Iran lost not just the president, but its foreign minister, both killed. 2 key political figures here at a time when there was already so much uncertainty across the country and the region more broadly. Keir Simmons is joining us now. Keir, we're glad to have you with us. Not clear what kind of response publicly the Iranian president's death would bring. Public grieving, there's a question mark where we see at the scale of, for example, when the Iranian General Soleimani was killed back in 2020. Talk us through what we did see here.
Well, it's impossible to know, isn't it, when you look at the pictures, exactly what the people in the pictures are thinking. I mean, in an autocracy, in a ruthless state like Iran, people will come out onto the streets because that's what they're supposed to do. Then there will be the others who genuinely are there because of the affection that they would have had for President Raisi, the late president. I think for many in that country that those feelings will be genuine. But of course, it's incredibly dangerous not to be there. I mean, just those pictures, the streets full of people, they are very, very impactful, right? But it is dangerous to take the counter view inside Iran. In fact, the Iranian prosecutor, Hallie, saying today that anyone criticizing the late president or celebrating his death would be pursued. Our partner broadcaster Sky News did do some interviews with Iranians, anonymous, of course, talking about the fact that in parts of Iran, they say sweets have been handed out, that there have been fireworks to celebrate President Raisi's death, that they are not mourning him in any way whatsoever. So there are messages there from Iranians who do not believe in this clerical regime that has been in power in Iran for 40 years. But at the same time, you look at the pictures and you can see that there are also many, many people grieving.
We saw back here at home where I am in Washington, Keir, the Secretary of State, just a couple blocks from me at the Capitol, giving testimony on some State Department matters with one lawmaker going after him and the State Department for expressing condolences. This became kind of controversial after Raisi's death. Blinken defended this. Let me play that.
It's something that we've done many times in the past, going back many administrations and many decades, and we do as a normal course of business.
Well, I don't think it should be a normal course of business. I think it's shocking that this administration would mourn the death of the butcher of Tehran. It's a terrible mistake, Mr. Secretary.
This is just one piece of many as it relates to the U.S.'s relationship with Iran right now, Keir.
It is, and it also tells you something about, frankly, that sometimes, well, they say all politics is local, don't they? Sometimes some of the things you're seeing are about U.S. domestic politics and not really about foreign policy. Let me put it to you in a different way, rather than get involved in that kind of very contentious domestic political debate there. Here in the Gulf states have been sending their condolences, and I think that is an indication. I mean, talking privately to diplomats here, what they talk about is trying to de-escalate the tension here in the region, that there is a policy among Gulf countries, including even Saudi Arabia, a traditional adversary of Iran, to try to reach out. It's slightly head-spinning, frankly, that's where we are here now in this region, while there has been this escalating confrontation between the US and Iran. But that's the policy here, and the question is really whether diplomacy like that is valuable, whether it works, whether there is an opportunity, a chance to try to pull Iran into a different kind of political arena. Now, people don't think that the politics of Iran is going to change. There's another thing too, though, just to finish, Hallie. Sometimes just communication is useful, and that might be another part of it.
Keir Simmons live for us there in Dubai. Keir, thank you for your reporting all this. Appreciate it. We've got some breaking news now here in the U.S. because in just the last couple of minutes, we saw the Louisiana House passing a bill that could make that state the first in the country to criminalize abortion pills by classifying them in the same category as substances like cocaine and heroin. Want to show you a live look here. This is the chamber as we speak. They've moved on at this point to other business. Again, they just voted in the last couple of minutes. Now, it's still got to go through the state Senate, I believe. But if this becomes law, if the governor signs it, anybody using certain abortion pills without a valid prescription could face jail time. Remember, abortion is already illegal in most cases in Louisiana, with lawmakers there actually just recently rejecting these proposed exceptions for rape and incest. Doctors in the state signing an open letter against this bill. Marissa Parra is in Baton Rouge. Okay, so bring us up to speed. Where does this bill stand and what's next?
Hey, Hallie. So you were correct. So we heard some back and forth, and it is officially passed in the House, but it is not going to the governor's desk quite yet. It has to go back to the Senate, and we have already seen this has been pretty unpredictable in terms of timing. We thought that what we saw today we would see yesterday. So this is politics. It doesn't always move in the timeline you think it's going to, and so we will see what happens when it goes back to the Senate, but I'll tell you, it is expected to pass. We saw it passed pretty overwhelmingly in the House, and we expected to do so in the Senate. And we also know the governor, he is a Republican. He has been very vocal against abortion rights, and there is no reason to expect he will not sign it once it does get to his desk. But I want to take you to that moment when we saw just now from inside the House just moments ago.
64 yeas, 29 nays, and the bill is finally passed.
So 64 yeas, 29 yeas. Like we said, it passed overwhelmingly in the House. And I want to take you to what we heard in our interview with State Senator Thomas Presley. This is the senator who authored this bill, and I will explain his original intentions when he authored it on the other side of it. But first, take a listen.
For me, that was unacceptable. I felt like it was not enough. It did not fit the crime of trying to kill his unborn baby and doing so against his wife's knowledge, which also caused significant health problems for my sister.
Okay, so let me explain what you just heard. State Senator Thomas Presley's sister, he says his sister was given abortion drugs without her knowledge, without her consent when she was pregnant. And she ended up giving birth early to a child that had health complications, putting her health at risk, and her child's health at risk. This happened in a different state, and it was her ex-husband who did it, Hallie. And so he faced 180 days in prison and jail as a result. And so State Senator Thomas Presley said that was simply not enough. That was what you heard him say just now. So he wanted to see harsher penalties for people who tried to do the same thing that his sister's ex-husband did. And so now, if this continues to move forward, Hallie, we would see harsher punishments because, like we just talked about, this would be classified as a controlled dangerous substance. It would be Schedule 4, and possession would be something that you could face prison time for. So specifically looking at this bill was originally authored to prevent coerced forced abortions, Hallie. But of course, we're hearing a lot of fallout and criticism from people on, who are for abortion rights and also physicians and doctors around the state of Louisiana.
Marissa Parra live for us there in Baton Rouge. Marissa, thank you. Let's take you out west, where the LAPD and the DEA are now investigating who gave Matthew Perry the ketamine that ultimately killed him. Remember, Perry, of course, the Friends superstar, died back in October at his home at the age of 54. The coroner ruled Perry's death an accident, but whoever provided the drugs could face criminal charges. Chloe Malas is following this for us and is joining us now. Bring us up to speed. What else do we know?
Hey there, Hallie. Well, listen, we have a statement from the Los Angeles Police Department who has said that based on the medical examiner's findings, now this was an autopsy that was done and the findings were released in December, that they have engaged with the Drug Enforcement Administration and the United States Postal Inspection Service to investigate the circumstances around his death. I was looking at the autopsy report this afternoon, Hallie, and in it, it states that a week and a half before Matthew Perry was found unresponsive in a hot tub at his Los Angeles home, that he had undergone a ketamine infusion about a week and a half prior. But based on my understanding of ketamine and based on the autopsy report, that would already have metabolized in his system. And they state in the autopsy report that he was undergoing ketamine infusions for depression and anxiety. And Matthew Perry had been very open about his struggles with addiction that was over the course of his career and his adult
life. But what's interesting here and why they're doing this investigation, Hallie, is that the amount of ketamine in Matthew Perry's system at the time of the autopsy was as much as what would be needed for general anesthesia. So the question is, how did Matthew Perry obtain that amount of ketamine? Who was the doctor overseeing this ketamine infusion therapy? Because the FDA has approved ketamine to be used to help anxiety and depression and psychiatric disorders, Hallie, but you have to be under the care of a doctor. You can't just be doing this on your own at home. And that amount is alarming and raises a lot of questions. So NBC News, we've reached out to individuals in Perry's camp. We've reached out to law enforcement for further questions, but it is incredibly concerning and a lot of questions. So could there potentially be criminal charges? I think that we still are a long road away from that, but it looks like they're trying to get these questions answered.
Chloe Malas, thank you for keeping us up to speed on that with this late breaking news tonight. Appreciate it. Coming up, some very scary scenes on a turbulent flight that left somebody dead. What we're learning about the victim and why this plane was bucking up and down so hard. Got to get to some breaking news now on those terrible storms we told you about at the top of this show here in Iowa. Officials say that one person is dead in that state, with all of those twisters still obviously in the air, still causing, as you look at this here, just such devastating damage. This is according to the Adams County Sheriff. It comes as the middle of the country is getting crushed with a very severe weather system this week. We're going to have more on this story as we get it. We'll bring it to you right here on NBC News Now. I also want to bring you this story, this super scary scene on a flight from London to Singapore. Deadly turbulence with at least one person dead, dozens of others seriously hurt. You can see how chaotic it was. People getting carried out on stretchers, luggage spilling out everywhere. You're about to see some of the pieces of the cabin that looked like it was kind of broken up after the plane carrying more than 200 people hit really bad turbulence. It apparently sort of bucked up and down, then dropped some 6,000 feet in a matter of minutes as the pilot began trying to force this emergency descent into Bangkok. It's hard to overstate just how unusual it is for somebody to die from something like this. We don't know a lot about what happened other than that the victim was a 73-year-old British man. The airport GM says he probably had a heart attack. At least 30 other people were scrambled to the hospital with reports of people's heads slamming into the cabins above their seats, some people getting thrown straight up. I want to bring in Tom Costello now for more. Very scary to see these images. A lot of concern about it. What else do we know?
This happened on the route from London to Singapore. This was a Boeing 777, very strong, very sturdy aircraft. It hit extreme turbulence at 37,000 feet. Here's the problem with turbulence. It's very difficult to predict it, right? You can have meteorologists saying you might want to steer clear of these particular cloud structures, but the only way you know for sure that there is bad turbulence ahead is if somebody ahead calls and says, get out of the way, you might want to reroute. And that is clearly what air traffic control tries to do all the time. We don't know if this crew had a heads up that they were headed into severe turbulence. I talked to Flight Radar 24. They monitor all these flights worldwide. They described this as a bucking bronco, that the plane was coming in like this and suddenly was up and then down and then up and then down, 400 feet, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. Now, the descent you mentioned, 37,000 feet down to 31,000 feet, that was a controlled emergency descent on autopilot that the pilot initiated. That in and of itself was not the turbulence, but he had to get that plane down fast. He had medical emergencies.
To get away from where the turbulence was.
Correct, right. And he had a medical emergency on board, so he declared a mass casualty event. They landed in Bangkok. I got to say, watching the video, the EMS response on the ground in Bangkok, very impressive. As for the passenger, though, the 73-year-old British man, all evidence at this point is that this was a cardiac event. It may have been triggered by the turbulence, but it appears he had a cardiac event and died.
There's been this discussion about, an air pocket or air pockets, plural, in the jet stream. Help a layperson understand how that plays into this here.
Well, listen, air pockets are everywhere, and that's why whenever you're flying, sometimes you feel a bump. That's an air pocket, right? If the pilot is suddenly surprised by it, if he or she didn't get the radio call, you and I have both been on flights where a pilot says, seatbelts, and then you immediately strap. You should have already been buckled in. The point is he gets surprised. This turbulence is not unusual. This was severe turbulence, and it happens around really big storm structures, and it's gotten worse with climate change. That's what matters. In fact, the jet stream and the vibrations, if you will, the violence, 15% stronger today than back in the 1970s.
Tom Costello, thank you so much for being all over this story for us. I know more to come, and you will bring it to us as we get it. Thank you, friend.
You bet.
Let's get you over to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, crews are still looking for 2 men who went missing over the weekend when their canoes went over a waterfall in Minnesota. Bad weather today grounded planes nearby, making the search harder. The 2 are part of a bigger group, with others getting rescued. Number 2, police near Chicago say 11 students were hospitalized today after at least 3 school buses crashed on a highway. Officials say traffic slowed down and one of the buses couldn't stop in time, so that set off a chain reaction. Police say the driver of the bus that started that reaction was cited for not slowing down, but fortunately, everybody's expected to be okay. Number 3, the South Carolina governor just signing a ban to prevent transgender minors from getting gender-affirming care, with that state now becoming the 25th to either restrict or ban that kind of care. It blocks things like gender transition surgeries and hormone treatments for anybody under the age of 18 there. It also requires school officials to tell parents if their kid wants to go by something not their legal name. Number 4, the Biden administration says it's releasing 1 million barrels from a reserve in a move to try to bring down gas prices for the busy summer travel season. Right now, gas averages like $3.60 a gallon, according to AAA. Number 5, is Serena Williams playing us, or is she going to be playing tennis in a big return? She posted a pretty cryptic message writing, "I'm ready to hit some balls again." Remember, she stepped away from tennis in 2022 to focus on her family. Is she going to pull a Tom Brady and unretire? She's hitting some ball. Is she going to play pickleball? Do we know? We want to know. We'll find out. Serena soon. Still ahead. Elvis's granddaughter, please excuse me for this, all shook up about the sale of Graceland, what we know about her last-minute push to try to block an auction. Plus, a German prince facing trial over a far-right coup plot. That's next. Elvis Presley's granddaughter says Graceland is not for sale, filing a lawsuit to try to stop an auction of the iconic property scheduled for Thursday. She says there's fraud. See, Riley Keough, Elvis's granddaughter, became the sole trustee of Graceland last year after her mother, Lisa Marie Presley, died. But a creditor filed a foreclosure claim on the property, saying it's collecting on an unpaid loan allegedly taken out by Lisa Marie back in 2018 that put up Graceland as collateral. Now, Keough filed a claim in Tennessee civil court saying that the foreclosure claim used forged signatures, that it's not real, that the creditor doesn't even exist. Maura Barrett is joining us now. What is going on? And most importantly, what happens to Graceland?
Hallie, it all presents as pretty sketchy, and so let me lay it out for you. Basically, Elvis Presley Enterprises, the company that's maintaining the estate right now, is coming out ahead of this lawsuit, trying to lay out, plain and simple as they put it, that this is all, that they basically said there's no foreclosure sale. They simply put the counter lawsuit that has been filed is to stop the fraud that they're claiming. And that's what we saw when we read through the lawsuit as well. Keough's lawsuit basically says that Lisa Marie never gave a deed of trust to Nasdaq Investments, and that even though her signature was all over the documents, that the signature was forged. And even though that signature was potentially forged, there was a public notary that was present. That notary is now also saying, cited in the lawsuit, that I did not notarize this document. And so there's a lot of questions swirling about how all of this came to be. But basically, Keough was trying to stop the sale of this estate that has been in her family since 1957, saying that this company is trying to commit a fraud. Now, what's more, as you dig even further into it, they're alleging the company doesn't exist. The name on the investment company, the defendant that's named in the suit is Kurt Nosany, and he told NBC News in an email that he left that firm back in 2015 and that he shouldn't be named in the filing at all. And it's important to note that his name is cited in emails as recently as 2023. And so there's a lot of questions swirling in terms of what's actually happening here. But it is important to know we just found out that a judge did grant a temporary restraining order. So that means the company, if it even exists, needs to hold off from this sale. It was planned for Thursday. They need to hold off for now until the court has an official hearing on it, and that's scheduled for tomorrow morning, Hallie.
Okay, so what are the possible outcomes here? Like, is it just Graceland stays open, Graceland gets sold to somebody who's not part of Elvis Presley's family? Like, is it this kind of binary choice?
Well, that's what it seems like Keogh's trying to stop. Point blank, they're trying to stop Graceland from being sold, period. And the thing is Graceland is still wildly successful. Like I said, it's been in the family since 1957. It opened to the public as a theme park in 1982. The house itself was appraised at $5.6 million. And just in 2022, it brought in $80 million in revenue. So it's still a popular tourist attraction. If an investor is interested in it, if the sale even goes through, if the company even gets through with this, based on what we're seeing these allegations flying around, what the court decides and lets them go through with the sale, the investor wouldn't get any rights to Elvis's image or likeness or any of the actual artifacts in the home. And so that's where the confusion is in terms of what actually happens if the home is sold and if it remains open to the public. But again, a judge will likely figure this all out tomorrow morning at a hearing. It's expected to last a few hours before they officially decide whether this auction can go through on Thursday, Hallie.
Well, I know what your assignment is tomorrow. More Barrett. We'll look for an update once that happens. Thank you very much, friend. Appreciate it. NBC News covers hundreds of international stories every day, and because it can be tough to read or watch or listen to them all, our teams around the world have done it for you. Here's a look at what they're watching in a segment we call The Global. Out of France, the president there is heading to New Caledonia tonight. Remember, that's the island in the Pacific where riots started last week. Deadly riots. 6 people were killed. The protests are over voting reforms being pushed through by the French government, which some say could sideline indigenous people. Emmanuel Macron's going to meet with leaders in New Caledonia. In the meantime, Australia and New Zealand are evacuating tourists. Out of Germany today, 9 people going on trial there, including a prince for allegedly planning to overthrow the German government. Prosecutors say they were going to storm the parliament, arrest lawmakers, and put the prince in charge of Germany. The whole thing was exposed 2 years ago. This trial is not set to end anytime soon. It could stretch into 2025. And out of Ecuador, officials there are honoring 5 rescue dogs retiring after 7 years. Dogs who they say helped find survivors of earthquakes and landslides, even went to other countries to help out. Now they will be adopted by new owners and start the second part of their lives. Still ahead. Lots to cover here on the show, including our teams going inside one of the most extreme anti-abortion groups in the country. Our sit down with their leader, who says some women who get abortions may deserve the death penalty. To tonight's original now, with in-depth reporting on a topic we've been watching, an NBC News investigation tonight into a far-right group pushing for the criminalization of women who receive abortions. Operation Save America, going state by state, advocating for the most extreme laws to do just that, because they don't think the Republican Party is doing enough. Our own Stephanie Gosk talked with the man leading it all.
The overturning of Roe v. Wade didn't end the battle over abortion access. It just ignited another fierce round of fighting. And the issue remains front and center as the country heads into the 2024 elections. At the state level, the fight is the grittiest. Is it murder?
Absolutely.
This is Jason Storms, director of Operation Save America, who publicly advocates extreme positions on a number of issues.
Revolution 2.0 going on right here.
So we're talking about the very real possible reality that we have to take up arms against our own tyrannical government, and are we prepared to do it and win?
With OSA, he travels around the country to lobby for legislation that could put women in jail, or worse, for getting an abortion.
You are intentionally killing a human being. That is the definition of murder.
Should that person be charged and convicted for murder?
Absolutely.
Prison for life?
Well, whatever the laws are for killing an innocent person, yeah.
In some places, that's the death penalty.
Absolutely.
At the national level, OSA's message is a potential thorn in Republicans' side at a time when some in the party are concerned the abortion issue is bad politics, even moderating their positions as elections get closer.
A full ban on abortion is not where the people are.
It's way more extreme than what Arizonans want.
And how you doing?
But Storms has found support at the state level, and he's pushing to get more.
Are there politicians who you have helped get elected who are fighting your cause?
Yes.
We have legislative efforts going in 18 different states. On the ground, we mobilize hundreds of people.
There have been more than 24 bills introduced in states around the country in the last 2 years that would open the door for a woman to be investigated and even prosecuted.
Now we've had 14 states presently that have banned abortion. And so while that is a step in the right direction to put abortion under our homicide statutes, it's illegal for a doctor to perform an abortion in 14 states. But in all those states, The mothers are explicitly exempted from any punishment or any legal accountability.
And you don't think that should be the case?
Not at all.
Operation Rescue.
OSA is the rebranded version of Operation Rescue, active in the 1980s. In the following decade, tensions over the abortion issue ran high, and doctors were even killed. Neither Operation Rescue nor OSA were ever involved in violence against clinic operators, says Storms. Now, a handful of people connected with OSA have been convicted of violating the FACE Act, which outlaws obstructing women's access to clinics, and they are awaiting sentencing.
Well, I'm looking at 22 years in federal prison. That's what I'm looking at. I wish I could have done more pro-life ministry, and I have zero regrets.
Yeah, meetings were good, very productive.
In Ohio, Storms brought his followers and his family to the state capitol, including several of his 11 children, to lobby lawmakers.
Keep up the good fight.
He had meetings with at least 3 state representatives. Last November, Ohio passed a constitutional amendment protecting abortion access up to 22 weeks. One of the lawmakers behind it, State Representative Anita Somani, an OBGYN.
If you look at the statistics for last November, 57% of people in Ohio voted for the constitutional amendment protecting the right to abortion. That is not a minority. That is a majority of people.
Storms told us he's in Ohio because he believes the Republican Party failed in mobilizing the anti-abortion vote.
The Republican Party did not put the money and the resources into this fight in the way that the Democratic Party did to win here.
Do you think there's a possibility that a majority of people in this state just simply don't agree with you, Jason?
That's certainly possible, of course. But this is a very red state. Donald Trump won huge in this state, and pro-life people dominate all aspects of state government here.
Hey guys, we're going to round everybody up here and pray.
From the Capitol building in Columbus, OSA drove to Cincinnati and showed up at Planned Parenthood.
And there will be consequence to shedding of innocent blood.
The right to walk down the sidewalk. Y'all can't block the sidewalks. You gotta let people walk down the sidewalk.
The group protested at 2 clinics in the area, including this one in Dayton.
You're a father. Whether you want to be or not, you already are a father.
We did not film the multiple women who walked inside.
There have been times when it gets loud, when there's a bit of shouting. Does it become intimidation?
On our part?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't think so, no. I mean, that's counterproductive to what we're trying to accomplish.
How about harassment?
Of course not, no.
But later that afternoon, we caught up with one of the clinic's doctors.
Did anyone come in today and say, God, that was really hard coming in here?
Multiple people said it was a really hard thing to come in today.
Did your patients feel like they were harassed and intimidated today?
Yes.
So we pray that souls will come to know you today.
Storm says it's important not just to pressure the women who are going in to get abortions, but also try to convince young people on college campuses and even at high schools.
Planned Parenthood is feeding propaganda to these kids. We're trying to counter that message.
But what matters most, he says, is pressuring the politicians who are running for office. And at the top of his list is Donald Trump.
We're pressuring Donald Trump right now. And a lot of us are threatening to withhold our votes from him and saying, you're not going to get our vote if you're not going to stand strong in defense of preborn children.
But if he does not, will you stay home?
Yes.
You won't vote that day?
Well, I'll vote for a third party.
He says he doesn't believe Trump is going far enough. All the presumptive nominee has said is it's in the state's hands.
The states will determine by vote or legislation or perhaps both, and whatever they decide must be the law of the land.
Storms voted for Donald Trump in 2020, even showing up at the rally outside the U.S. Capitol on January 6th.
We're at the Capitol. A bunch of guys rushed in, got into the rotunda, overtook the building. They got tear gassed.
In battleground states, the margins are razor thin. Every vote counts. Doctors and lawmakers who've devoted their lives to supporting a woman's right to abortion access worry politicians might court extreme views on abortion just for the votes. Views like Jason Storms.
My question to you is, why should your version of Christianity and what you see as the beginning of autonomous life be what governs the whole country when we have a country that's based on freedom of religion?
Because we believe it's true.
Stephanie Gosk is joining us now. Steph, thanks for being with us here. You raised the question to Mr. Storms there about whether his position is out of step with the majority of where Americans are right now, based on polling as it relates to abortion access. And you explained that he is not happy with former President Trump for his position on abortion access. Here we are in an election year, months away from an election. Talk to us more about that piece of it.
Yeah, sure. I mean, for a lot of people in this country who were, against abortion access in this country, they thought the overturning of Roe v. Wade was just a step towards a national ban. Now, not all of those people have the kind of extreme views we heard from Storms, including prosecuting a woman for murder in the event that she got an abortion. But they certainly were looking for a national ban. And I think that there is a growing level of disappointment among these people that a national ban is kind of off the table for a lot of Republicans who are, at a bare minimum, acknowledging, Hallie, that this is not a good political issue for them. You obviously heard President Trump backing off any talk of a national ban, saying it's in the state's hands. What's unclear, and a question for a lot of Republicans, is whether that's going to keep people home or keep them from voting, in the election.
Stephanie Gosk, thank you very much for bringing us that reporting. We'll be right back. The world's biggest food company tonight is announcing a new line of frozen options aimed at the growing number of people who are using weight loss drugs like Ozempic and Wegovy. The new brand is set to roll out later on this year with 12 products to start: frozen bowls with whole grains or pasta, sandwiches, pizzas, etc., plus some gluten-free options that Nestle says will only cost about $5. Brian Chung is joining us now. Okay, the reason I think why this is elevated from like a sort of commercial to a news story is the business angle, right? There's a lot of companies who are already in this market trying to make money off of different diets that people have. This one is interesting because it is specifically aimed at people who are on some of these new weight loss products.
Yeah, and we've been talking a lot on this program and many other programs as well about the growth of these GLP-1 products that have really spurred these weight loss movements. But now we're seeing kind of on the periphery of these, all of these other industries that are trying to tack onto this trend as well, food being the biggest one. So you have Nestle here saying, all right, we're going to offer these meals that kind of supplement the weight loss journey, is how they describe it, that people who are using Wegovy or Ozempic will be on. And in one example that they kind of cited here, well, if you are cutting back on food, broadly speaking, how do you know that you're getting all the nutrients that you need elsewhere? So these types of meals might prioritize, for example, protein. You can see the chicken there. But again, weight loss in America, this is a very big trend with the proliferation of these types of drugs. 49% of adults saying they've tried to lose weight. You have 30 million predicted by 2030, according to JP Morgan, that could be on these GLP-1 drugs. And for food makers like Nestle, you're trying to capitalize on that as well, Hallie.
It's not like they're going to be sold in packaging that has a big stamp that says like for Ozempic users or anything, right? I mean, it's going to be a little more subtle than that.
No, not at all. I think that the branding of this is going to be, I think, Vital Pursuit is the way they're going to call it. It's going to be unveiled by the end of the year, but I think the pricing is very important here as well. You have inflation pinching a lot of wallets. They plan on selling these meals at about $5 a pop, and you can see the types of offerings that they have. There are bowls, there are pizzas as well, so the lifestyle very much a big part of this as well. But again, the big story here, Hallie, is really all about the proliferation of these drugs and the types of products like in food that are likely to be associated with this as well. A lot of companies trying to make sure they can cash in if that does become a big profit maker.
Brian Chung, thank you very much. Appreciate it. That does it for us for this hour. We've got more coverage picking up right now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.